Welcome to a video recording of a conversation with board members of the San Francisco Black Community Restoration Institute. The conversation focuses on key issues facing San Francisco Black community nonprofit organizations amid increasing external scrutiny, budget cuts, and dwindling services. This conversation was recorded in preparation for community discussion and workshop the Institute is convening with San Francisco Black community nonprofit leaders on June 20th, 2024. I'm Perry Lang, president of the Institute's board, and my fellow board members are Gerald Harris, D. Epps Miller, Larry Chapman, Lillian Shine, and Jimmy Loyce. Leslie Evelyn is a consultant and facilitator to the board. To learn more about the Institute and this event, please visit our website at sfbcri.org. Gerald Harris is the moderator for this conversation. As background, he references a position paper that you can find on our website.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'll serve as the facilitator of this discussion about the San Francisco Black Community Restoration Institute position paper. And the point of this brief discussion is just to highlight some of the key points that we think, as you read the paper, you may want to bear in mind. The San Francisco Black Community Restoration Institute wants to be a positive force in helping Black-led community-based organizations in San Francisco deal with a very complex and challenging environment in the city at this time. And that is the purpose of the position paper, which you will have available as well. So I want to start the group off with an open question that we can discuss, which is sort of what do you see as the key issues really facing Black community-based organizations? And anyone can feel free to chime in and touch on points that they think are important.
Well, the first thing that strikes out to me is our demographics. Our community is shrinking drastically, and where there's no voice, there's no power. And so I think the demographics is one of the key issues that our community is struggling with right now. You know, the lack of our population leaving the city over the years.
Another issue is funding sources are drying up or creating a challenge with being able to get the resources to continue the work of the agencies. And so there's a scramble for resources, there's a scramble for meeting the criteria that's necessary to be successful in a bidding process.
One of the things that concerns me is the growing arena of discontent and suspicion and demoralization on Black CBOs as a result of the kinds of scandals that have been proliferating in the news continuously, particularly within the last couple of years. And how that both casts a negative shadow on Black CBOs, but it also has a spinoff in terms of replacement of Black executives, including program directors as well as heads of departments for the city. And they're not being backfilled with other Black leadership who have years and years of experience. And so our pipeline has been of leadership development has been diminished almost to a virtual drip.
I agree with everything that has been said, and I tend to think of it in two parts. What sort of needed or the key issues in the community and the key issues from the larger civic society. I think our community-based organizations serve a need, and the need is not necessarily addressed by profit-driven capitalism. And I think for our nonprofits, we need to have a clarity of vision, a clarity of mission, and a clarity of strategy. And in the community, I think we need to pay attention to our governing boards, groups that can provide strategic direction. We need to pay attention to our staffs. With our shrinking population, we recognize we may not always have the skills and the expertise that we need. Therefore, we need some kind of training. But in the civic area, I also think we need supportive policies that support a vision and a mission and strategies that are about improving our neighborhoods.
So when we talk about restoring and sustaining Black-led organizations, what are the kind of things that we're seeing that need to be addressed? And we have some suggestions in our position paper, but anyone want to talk a little about a few of those as well?
I think partnership that was really essential back in the 70s and 80s with the city and county of San Francisco within the community is, I think it's paramount, because you meet with the people, you understand what the people needs are, and you partner with them so that they can get culturally relevant services implemented at that time. And I think that has diminished over the years. And I think the city needs to get back to valuing the community as a partner.
Mhm. The other piece to me is leadership development, recognizing that being indigenous ambassadors, so to speak, as CBOs, all of the things that Kim just got through saying, I think that what you find in terms of innate leadership kinds of capabilities versus what their educational or experiential level might happen to be at the time that you find them. There needs to be a way by which people who have raw talent and have intuitive organizational skills and have compatibility with the clientele can be put into a kind of a leadership track that is acknowledged as having some value and brings dollars with it to support that happening, so that there's not a brain drain, or an experience drain or a leadership drain in an organization when a leader leaves and creates a vacuum and nobody that's in-house is qualified to take that leadership position. And I think that it needs to be, when you talk about a policy piece, Perry, that's part of what I'm looking at, is how do you invest in CBOs in ways that augment the meager dollars that you have, but acknowledge what the reality of developing leadership costs, and be willing to support that piece as a line item in every budget.
I agree, and I do think it is a public and private partnership that we need to look at. When I look at a few of the other ethnic groups that I think are being successful, what they have done is created public-private partnerships that allow them to anchor different nonprofits in the community in a strategic fashion that supports their culture and also embraces those around them, and I think we need to look at doing those things as well.
Absolutely.
I would also believe that we should assess the need for services in the specific communities where Black people live, areas which are void of specific kinds of services could perhaps be the places where we look at restoring CBOs that have served that population over the years. That services may have dwindled due to all kinds of due to staffing issues, due to outreach, due to resources. So we need to look at our communities more closely. What are the greatest needs? in those communities and who is providing those services now, and if they're doing it at the level that is necessary to sustain the community. And when we do those kinds of things, we gather data about issues that we could look at in terms of collaborating with other organizations, advocacy at a level in city government or other funding sources. So we have some way of measuring the ability to change what we see that is not providing the services that is needed for the people in the Black community.
I think also that, excuse me, I think also we need to look at the DEI issue that government and the private funders are saying that they are invested in and they want to make sure it happens. And the truth of the matter is DEI is placed upon the Black community, but when you look at the broader community and you ask the broader community, what does DEI mean to you? It means that we'll go into those communities which we have not traditionally served and take out the folks that are there who can provide services, and we'll provide it at our site. That's going to hurt us in significant ways in terms of Black community, Black-led organizations. So we need to define what DEI means for us.
So we end the paper with a call to action in terms of additional financial resources, support in terms of human resource management, a range of issues. So what's our call to action here in terms of really changing the state of things?
Well, let's start with awareness. I think that people are so involved in the media, social media, and whose lives are so chaotic because of a lot of the societal chaos and disorder, that people aren't fully aware of what's going on. And so there needs to be a creation of awareness, aside from a blurb that might be in the news and the gossip that ensues afterwards. There's no attempt to have some analysis of why and how this is happening. So I think that's one of the first precursors to how it is. And then following that, I mean, and that's just in the general population, it's an assessment or an opportunity for conversation and collaboration among providers to get a better understanding of what are the factors that all or some or most of them are engaging, and what are the impediments, and what are the desperate needs in some cases that have been unmet and perhaps specifically unheard by people who can make a difference.
I also think that
no, go, Jim, please.
I also think that what you just described, Dee, I think that's important and critical. But I also think that it requires for us in community to make a commitment to do something.
Yes.
It's not just because the data is there. We know the data is there, and there are a variety of resources that we can tap into that will give us data. What is missing from the data that's science-based or politically based or economically based or housing based is the anecdotal stories of community about what I need as a member of this community and what my household needs as members of the community to move forward.
I think the thing that I was going to add is that I do think it's a both and. Now is the time to call to action internally, the community, to stand up and do better and to hold people accountable, for making sure that we're having, as Jimmy would say, positive outcomes and not outputs. It's time to hold our community accountable, and it is time to hold our allies accountable. If we
Yes.
really believe in this thing and we see this kind of injustice, how do we stand together and begin to move this ball up this hill? It's about our own internal call to action and our own community, larger community call to action.
Well, I
Excellent.
think go ahead.
Go ahead. Mhm.
I agree totally with what Perry just said. I think it's time for us, for the community, to get woke in a whole kind of different direction. I'm concerned about the budget cuts that are absolutely decimating our CBO communities, and so part of that awareness piece needs to get put out there. Sometimes the community doesn't rise up until what they've had is suddenly gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there needs to be some strong advocacy
Yes.
Immediately around the proposed budgetary cuts, because when they happen, it's done. And in my own personal experience, it tells me that once money has been diverted from one pot and been allocated into another line item within another area, within another community, blah, 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 it's gone forever. And so part of it is some stopgap stuff that needs to occur so that people are both aware of perhaps the injustice in it all and can coalesce around the kinds of ways that groups and CBOs and communities are isolated and forced to be portrayed as outliers, when in fact it's a vicious circle that eventually will encompass us all.
I've got a different thing I want to add. And Gerald, I want to check in with you, quite frankly. I know you're moderating our discussion, but when you look at all of this, what comes up for you that we need to do and work on?
Well, I think the paper that came out on the by the city that looked at the performance and the other kinds of oversight of community-based organizations, I think it pinpointed some real weaknesses on the part of the city in terms of how it's managing these organizations, how they're confusing goals, and an organization that may have funding from different parts of the city has conflicting objectives. So the overall bureaucracy and the financial management of these agencies is certainly crippling them.
Absolutely.
And so changes at that level certainly need to occur. And then the kind of, I'll just say, support services that organizations need in terms of management assistance, helping with data issues or human resources issues or financial issues or board development issues. Those are things that, the top organizations have. So why shouldn't, community-based organizations have the same kind of assistance and help? And so I think that's what we are really arguing for, not only in the white paper and the other materials that we put together, but I think is really the basis of why the Institute actually exists. That's what this group is really trying to bring together and to bring into helping San Francisco. So I think anyone who sees this video and other materials that we have will pick up on the deep effort that we're trying to push forward here.
Love it. Let me ask you, Leslie, as an ally in this struggle, what is your thinking on this discussion?
I think bringing the leaders of the community-based organizations together to get a shared understanding of what's happening is so important. And there are these two forces. greater scrutiny and demand for compliance with challenging bureaucratic rules and shrinking resources. You know, the Department of Public Health unions just voted for a pay raise and with shrinking budgets. So that means even less money available to the CBOs and more pressure by the unions to take resources that were devoted to the CBOs and use those for the city government. So this is really a time of crisis, and in times of crisis, it's important to come together and find solutions together.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. One of the things that I just share as I was thinking about this morning, there's a writer who said this: prayer isn't the only way to respond in a crisis, but it is the best way to begin. Prayer isn't the only way to respond in a crisis, but it is the best way to begin. And I think we've got to, as a community, just lean on everything that is sacred and move forward, you know, in a prayerful way, you know, so that the ancestors would be proud and that we can pass this baton and run this race to completion.